Hello and welcome to another new player hero guide by me, Steelfer. If you're just watching this video out of the blue, I do recommend people do start the series with the overview video, which gives about 2 minutes to each hero and gives a broad, high-level overview of how they play and what they do. Obviously, if you are here just to learn and deep dive into Chane, that's perfectly fine. These video series are designed for new players who are getting into Fab to help them really try and understand what hero they might want to main or what hero they might want to play first. And that is kind of the focus. We're going to be here for about 10 minutes just talking through what Chane does, how Chane does it, his key cards you need to get, and common deck lists and strategies that have worked for him. Chane Bound by Shadows came out in Monarch. He is one of the first of our talented heroes. The first 4 talented heroes came out in Monarch. Chane is a shadow hero. He shares the shadow trait with Levia, allowing him to play shadow cards, Runeblade cards, and Shadow Runeblade cards. It's important to note that he can't play Elemental Runeblade cards because you have to match both of the keywords on the set in order to get there. It's also worth noting when you're looking through Chane's cards that Seeds of Agony is in fact banned, and a weapon called Duskblade is also banned in CC. Seeds of Agony, the quick reason that it was banned is that it was too free and therefore too powerful to do what it did, and it made turning on a lot of Chane's abilities way too easy. Let's talk about Chane's ability. Chane has an ability that says create a soul shackle. This is a soul shackle token. Your next Runeblade or Shadow action this turn gains Go Again. Has Go Again itself. Soul Shackle banishes the top card of your deck every turn. Every time you have a Soul Shackle, you have an extra one, it will banish an extra card. There is no limit to the number of Soul Shackles you can make. Why would I want to keep banishing cards from the top of my deck just to get Go Again? Is Chane an aggro deck that burns out really quickly? The long and short answer of that is kind of both yes and no. Chane's cards have essentially got abilities that allow them to be played from the banished zone, which means if you banish them at the start of your turn, you can play them from that zone, both that turn and next turn. So essentially it's playing from exile, but without a time limit, like you would have in a game like Magic the Gathering. This is one of the reasons that Seeds of Agony was banned, because it can be played from the banished zone and it costs 0, which means there's essentially no downside to having it in your deck. If it's not the right time to play it, you can, just keep it there. If it is the right time to play it, you can play it for nothing. Blood Debt says at the beginning of your end phase, and this is important, all of Chane's cards that can be played from banished have got Blood Debt. And it says at the beginning of your end phase, if Riftbind is in your banished zone, you lose 1. So you're banishing all of his cards that have Blood Debt. If you don't clear your banished zone of Blood Debt cards by the end of the game, by the end of a turn, you will lose 1 life for each one that is still there. However, of course, if you only have 3 and you're just losing 3 life to set up a really powerful turn, then it doesn't really matter. And in fact, this was one of the big combos that got this particular card banned, because this gets +1 for each non-attack action card you've played this turn if it comes from your banished zone. And this, of course, is a free non-attack action card that you could play from your banished zone. So late game Chane players would have, say, 5 or 6 of these because they'd have pitched them during the game, and then maybe 2 or 3 of these, and then basically come in for 7, 7, 7 over and over again, right? Which is really powerful. So that's one of the reasons that was stopped. So you might think that Chane is like some super aggressive aggro character, and in some ways you're right. However, the important thing to understand about him, and it's important to understand this about Flesh and Blood in general, because you're pitching the cards early game that you will see late game, it is very possible for a Chane player throughout the game to pitch the cards they want for the turns they want later on. Which means that I, as a Chane player, can say on turn 1, okay, I want this card in 9 turns, so I'll pitch these 2 together, and then I'll play these ones out because I don't want them going back into my deck, and that will be how I'll play my turn. And then in 9 turns, when you're flipping over 8 cards from your banishes, because you've got 8 Soul Shackles, you're going to flip over those 2 cards you pitched on turn 1, and you're going to have the turn you set up for yourself rather than a random turn. So this isn't random, this banish. In fact, the longer you play through the deck, the less random it is, because the Chane player knows exactly what he's pitching in order to set up his deck for later on. Chane also has a pretty cool card in Eclipse, which has been quite hard to cast since this card got banned, because obviously this is a free card. Eclipse, basically, if you played 6 or more cards with Blood Debt this turn, you may play Eclipse from your banished zone. When you play it, you create Ursa. Ursa is an ally, which only 2 heroes in the game have. It basically sits on the board. It has its own life, so it can be attacked. You can't block for it, so if it takes 6 attack damage, it dies. And it has once per turn 0 attack. If it's attacking a hero with one or more cards in his soul, his attack gains go again. If you want to know what soul is, if you want to know what soul is, you're going to have to check out the light hero videos. That will give you a bit more idea about soul. But basically, this ability only works against certain light heroes if certain conditions are made. But other than that, it's a free 6-cost attack, and it's kind of important to understand you can give it go again with Chane's ability as well, so it's not entirely useless, even though it doesn't have go again. The other specialization card is Soul Reaping. It costs 6 for a 6-strength attack. But you can banish one or more cards from your hand rather than play the cost. They do not have to be Shadow cards or Runeblade cards or anything like that. But you do gain 1 for each card with Blood Debt you banish this way. If it is attacking a hero that has one or more cards in their soul, it also gains go again. But that, as I say, only relevant versus light heroes. A lot of the time you will just give this go again from Chane and then just come in for 6 and put some good cards in your soul that you want to use later on. And it generates 1 resource for each of those cards so you can pay for it. Let's talk about deck lists. As I say, Chane's deck lists aren't very easy to look up historically, because if you look at this deck from about a month or 2 ago, Seeds of Agony is of course included, so they can be good as a basis, but obviously Seeds of Agony was really popular in these decks, and every deck ran basically the full 9 or 6 copies of them, so it can be a bit tricky if you're looking at historical Chane decks to figure out what goes in and what is good. But there are some modern versions of Chane that are doing quite well after the ban, and I'm just going to pull out some cards that are kind of really important to play with Chane, because I think it's just really good to understand how certain cards work. Let's look at the Majestics first that you might want to get, just to fuel Chane specifically from his own set and from others. So we talk about Art of War. This is a very expensive money card, but obviously if you've read Chane's ability, you may banish an attack action card from your hand if you do draw 2 cards. And the second you understand that a lot of Chane's attacks, like for example Bounding Demigon, can be played from the banish zone, you realize that essentially what Art of War does in Chane is different to what Art of War does in every hero, which is that it doesn't demand a cost. It just says banish a card. If you do, you draw 2 cards. If you banish a card that you can then play from your banish zone, you're essentially drawing an extra 2 cards that turn, which is very good. And then you're also giving attack action cards +1/+1 or go again. There's a reason this card is quite expensive, and I would recommend that if you're going to play Chane, you are probably going to need them, but obviously you don't need them right away at the start. I think the ones you do want right away at the start are your Shadow Puppetries, which is a Monarch Majestic and not super expensive. It gives you a next attack action +1 and go again, which is huge. If this attack hits, look at the top card of your deck, you may banish it. You also, Tome of Torment's an optional choice. I wouldn't say you need that. I would say you probably need Shadows of Ursa. It's a 0 for 2. It has Blood Debt, so it can be played from your banished zone. It blocks for 3, and it's a blue. As an additional cost to play it, you can banish a card with Blood Debt from your hand. If you do, it gains go again. What this lets you do is put cards that gain benefits if played from your Blood Debt zone, like, for example, the... We've lost it now. Bounding Demigon we had earlier, and the Riftbind we had earlier. These only get bonuses when played from the banished zone. So it's important to get them into the banished zone, which you can do with things like Shadow of Ursa at the start of your turn, while also getting go again. So that's a really useful card. Sting of Sorcery is a pretty nice Majestic as well. As you'd imagine, Chane's ability, giving itself go again, lends itself to doing more than 1 attack a turn, and if you do that with Sting of Sorcery, you will be doing an extra 1 arcane damage with every attack, which can add up to be quite a lot. The other things I would say is try and get your red plunder runs. They're really powerful in Chane because they let you draw a card, and of course they buff your attack. Drawing a card in Chane is really important because it lets you basically get resources to fuel going a bit wider. Howl from Beyond's great as well because it lets you pitch a blue to attack. Flock of the Featherwalkers is an addition that basically lets you create a Quicken token, which gives your next weapon or attack action card go again. And it's a really good card to end a turn on in Chane because then it will basically set up your next turn to have even more go again. And basically Chane is, and I kind of want to, let's take a step back from the deck list. Obviously you can look up these deck lists for yourself. Just go to the FabDB website and type in deck lists. But let's take a step back and just talk a bit about playstyle with Chane. So Chane is, on the surface of it, an aggro-focused deck. He's a bit slower since the ban, but he's still quite aggro-focused. And he can come in hard fairly early on. Where Chane really shines is not playing super aggressive at the start, building up his shackles and pitching lots of cards to make his turns more relevant. The Chane is actually quite a hero, I would say, with quite a high ceiling in terms of the aggro heroes, in terms of learning to play the nuances of him, because a lot of what you can do with Chane is structure your turns and your gameplay to fit the game that you're playing. And by that I mean, like, if you're facing basically someone who's trying to fatigue you, you may not want to play every turn all of your red cards out. You might want to pitch someone to the bottom of your deck, make sure they're coming up later, and just try and play very efficient turns that make them block quite aggressively, so that you can basically push cards from their hand and their deck and build into a situation where when they can't block as well later on, because they've blocked with all of their good cards, like their defense reactions, you're then flipping the red cards that are going to help you push damage. And that's going to be how you get through to break. And that's kind of Chane's gameplay style. So I fully recommend him to people who don't just want to play a straight aggro rush deck, who do want a bit more nuance to their aggro, and feel like they have the capability to flex and change based on the situation they're in. I feel like if you put a lot of time into playing Chane, I feel like he will reward you. It's also worth noting, just as a quick aside before I end this video, that obviously Chane is a Runeblade, and we already have 3 Runeblade heroes, which means if you start collecting some of the legendaries for Chane, like Grasp of the Arc Knight, or some of the generic Runeblade Majestics like Sting of Sorcery and things like that, you may also be able to use them in Viscerai and Briar, which is of course quite an appealing option. You obviously can't play any of the Shadow Runeblade cards in them, but you know, you can't have everything. Anyway, as always, if you liked this video, I hope this has helped bring you into playing Chane, or put you off if it really wasn't for you. And obviously, if you did like this video, please do give me a like and subscribe. If you have any questions that weren't answered by this video, please do respond in the comments. And obviously, I do plan on re-recording these videos whenever significant changes or updates happen to heroes. Therefore, if you have any suggestions for what you think should be included the next time I do a video on Chane, please do let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to add your thoughts in as well when I sit down to record, though I do have to keep these videos short because they are supposed to be a quick snapshot. As always, I've been Steelfur. Thanks a lot for listening, and have a great day.